For decades, Jim Hackman was one of Hollywood's most respected actors. His retirement was quiet, his family life discreet, until an unprecedented tragedy pulled him out of the shadows. His death, along with that of his wife, Bae Arawa, was initially treated as an unfortunate incident. But as investigators began analyzing the details, they uncovered a disturbing story, one that pointed in a single direction: his own daughter, Leslie Hackman. Why did security cameras capture suspicious movements before the bodies were discovered? Is it possible that someone knew about their deaths before it was officially announced? And why was Leslie Ann moving money and modifying legal documents when, according to her, she didn't even know her father had passed away? The truth is not just scandalous, it's terrifying. And what prosecutors discovered left no room for doubt. For decades, no one heard from Jim Hackman or his wife. Mail piled up at their doorstep, the blinds remained closed, and the neighborhood grew concerned. Then, a call alerted the police. When officers entered, time seemed to have stopped. Hackman was slumped near the kitchen, his glasses lying beside him. Betsy was in the bathroom, surrounded by scattered pills. There was no blood, no signs of struggle, and no immediate explanation. Just one chilling detail. Their bodies had been decomposing for weeks, yet the dogs were still alive. The air inside the house was stale, with no ventilation. The clock of death had started ticking long before. What seemed like a domestic tragedy quickly turned into an impossible puzzle, one that pointed to someone who knew more than they claimed. The key to the mystery didn't come from a confession or even physical evidence. It came from a medical device. Hackman's pacemaker recorded his last heartbeat on February 17th. That meant that from that day onward, no one had attempted to seek help. No calls, no internet searches, no bank transactions. It was as if the world around them had frozen. But then, something unsettling emerged. Security cameras showed shadows, movements, signs of life around the house after that date. The most disturbing twist came when police traced geolocation data, an unregistered phone that briefly connected near the residence in the days following the deaths. Who was there? What were they looking for? And why didn't they call for help? If they knew what had happened, the answer was chilling. That phone was linked to Leslie Ann Hackman. Leslie Ann claimed she had spoken to her father shortly before his death, but call records proved otherwise. There were no calls, no messages, nothing. And while the public remained unaware of the tragedy, she had already begun moving money, hidden transactions, cash withdrawals, consultations with lawyers regarding Hackman's estate, all before. His death was even announced, but that wasn't all. When prosecutors examined the will, they found altered pages, modified dates, and questionable signatures. The most serious change? An attempt to accelerate the transfer of assets to Leslie's name without going through the proper legal process. It was clear this wasn't a grieving daughter. It was someone who had been preparing to benefit from her father's absence for a long time. With all the evidence, irregular financial movements, digital records, altered legal documents, and confirmed surveillance, prosecutors had no doubts. Leslie Ann Hackman was arrested and charged with fraud, financial manipulation, obstruction of justice, and document forgery. The verdict was swift and clear. Guilty on all counts. She lost all rights to the inheritance. Her name was removed from the estate records. Jim Hackman's assets were legally protected to prevent further exploitation. But beyond the punishment, one question remained. Was Leslie merely an opportunist? Who took advantage of the moment? Or was she part of something far darker and premeditated? Days after the bodies were discovered and the case began to unfold, a seemingly insignificant detail went unnoticed until a forensic investigator decided to examine one of Hackman's favorite books. Inside an old edition, hidden between the pages, was a handwritten letter signed by Jim. It had no date, but its content was chilling. Sometimes I fear for what comes after me. I've tried to warn her, but she refuses to listen. I hope she changes before it's too late. Though it didn't mention names, the message was clear. The letter was sent to forensic handwriting experts who confirmed its authenticity. Everything pointed to one thing. Jim Hackman feared for his legacy and his own daughter. Was this letter a warning, a desperate attempt to protect his estate, or a silent testimony that predicted what would ultimately happen as the trial progressed? Prosecutors dug deeper into Leslie Ann's personal life. What they found didn't just confirm their suspicions, it multiplied them. Leslie had been reported 3 times by former partners for financial manipulation, emotional control, and digital identity forgery. In one case, back in 2018, she was discovered to have created a parallel bank account in her partner's name, without their consent, transferring funds and draining joint investments. Though she never faced criminal charges due to out-of-court settlements, her pattern of behavior was evident. A master of deceit, a predator of trust, a manipulator who preyed on those closest to her. Jim Hackman, in his old age, may have simply been her next victim. Despite the magnitude of the scandal, no other close family members of the Hackman lineage made public statements. No brothers, no cousins, no childhood friends, just silence. However, a journalist managed to contact a former personal assistant of the actor, who worked with him for over 10 years. What she revealed was devastating. Jim tried to reach out to Leslie many times, she said, but every time he did, something went wrong. Fights over money, arguments over personal decisions. In the last years, they barely spoke. She also confirmed that Hackman had considered removing Leslie from his will, but hesitated out of fear of media repercussions. That delay was his fatal mistake. And Leslie, knowing it, waited silently until she couldn't anymore. One of the most chilling discoveries of the case came from forensic analysis of the home's internal security cameras. Though many recordings were missing, one recovered fragment from the night of February 17th showed a hooded figure moving through the kitchen. There were no signs of forced entry, no burglary. But the most alarming detail, the security alarm never went off. This suggested that whoever entered had the code. Hours later, the system was manually shut down and data was erased. Only one other person had direct access to the alarm password, Leslie Ann Hackman. Prosecutors now suspect she may not have acted alone. Authorities are investigating whether a second person, possibly an emotional or financial accomplice, helped cover her tracks. With these new findings, the case has shifted from financial fraud to a possible investigation into concealed homicide. Jim Hackman dedicated his life to art, discretion, and keeping his personal life away from the spotlight. He retired in silence with dignity as one of Hollywood's last great gentlemen, but he never imagined that the greatest threat to his legacy would come from within his own home. Leslie Ann Hackman didn't just betray her father's trust, she erased him emotionally long before his death. She orchestrated his downfall not with sorrow, but with strategy. And when she thought she had done everything right, the truth started speaking for itself. Digital records, cameras, alarms, manipulated accounts, forged signatures. The evidence wasn't just overwhelming, it was irrefutable. Now, with her conviction sealed and new investigations underway, the shadow Leslie cast over the Hackman name seems impossible to erase. The saddest part? In his final years, Jim wanted to believe in her. He gave her chances. He left the door open. But Leslie chose greed over blood, silence over love, betrayal over honor, and that choice will haunt her forever. Now it's your turn. Do you think Leslie Ann acted alone? Or are we looking at a darker web of hidden accomplices? Leave your opinion in the comments, and if you want to uncover the real stories Hollywood never thought would come to light, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thanks.